Welcome to the Timeless Podcast, presented by the Timeless Hearing Network of audiology and hearing care professionals. We're on a mission to convince you that the best moments of your life lie ahead of you, not behind. That your spark, though wavering, can be reignited, your energy restored, and the fullness of both your love and life can be recaptured or redefined. While our focus is on diagnosing and treating conditions of the ear, we believe in treating the patient beyond the audiogram in hopes of better understanding not just that patient's needs, but their motivation towards achieving a better quality of life, their support system at home, and their beliefs around treatment and self-determination. Hearing care sits at the nexus of communication, healthcare, technology, and of course, healthy aging. Hearing healthcare is related to cognition, relational and emotional health, confident and effective gross motor movement, and of course, independence and quality of life. In fact, untreated hearing loss in midlife can lead to irreversible health declines later on. Our goal is to pre-educate patients prior to treatment, as well as drive more interest in treatment and referrals from physicians and healthcare professionals and influencers. Today, we'll be speaking with Emily Gozy, founder of Nourished with Emily. Nourished with Emily, headquartered in Syracuse, New York, works with professional men and women locally and around the United States who struggle to find time to support their own health and nutrition goals. By offering tailored and paced programming led by registered dietitians and qualified nutrition professionals, helping you break away from restriction and restricted dieting so you can save time, energy, and headaches while achieving your goals through their proprietary Nourished with Emily nutrition method. Practical nutrition advice, guidance, evidence-based nutrition recommendations, and their accountability, knowledge, and experience of trained coaches and dietitians. Well, Emily, thank you.
Thank you
Welcome.
so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here, and congratulations, by the way. I know you're recently married, and many people may already be engaging with your content. Nourished with Emily is still Nourished with Emily, but you were Emily Tills, and now Emily Gozy.
Yeah.
So just in case some folks are not following you along that life journey, that's something that's happened recently. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yep. Still Nourished with Emily, just different last name.
Excellent. Excellent. So Emily, a general question to start. Not all of your clients are advancing in age, but you do have some background in working with elder care and supporting their nutrition and dietary needs. But with your clients today and thinking about some of those other clients you've had, what challenges, if any, do you see that people could increase as they age if they're not paying attention to what they're eating?
Yeah. So let's face it, we're not taught nutrition in elementary school, middle school, high school. I had to go to college to get my degree in nutrition and dietetics to understand how to eat and why this stuff is so important. So many of us, whether you're younger or older, we're getting a lot of our nutrition information from social media, Google searching, WebMD, where 2% of all social media information or information on social media about nutrition is actually accurate.
Wow.
So if we're giving ourselves inaccurate information, or we're part of that 50% of Americans that engage in restrictive dieting every year, we're not getting the nutrition that we need. We're not really fueling our bodies for the long haul. We're thinking of how can I achieve my goals in these next 10, 15, 30 days, and forgetting about that health is really built at the foundation of building your nutrition foundation and making sure you're getting in all of those things that you need to age healthily and be independent for as long as you can.
Yeah. That's amazing to me. 2% is just mind-blowingly low.
Yeah.
What is the driver of that? Is that just the wrong people with the wrong information are propagating those misconceptions? Is it some degree of influence by, big food companies that are trying to get food that isn't quite healthy into the hands of people who, should be eating something else? I mean, what is the reason?
I think it's a combination of all of those factors. The big thing that we see is that there are people who claim to be nutrition professionals but have zero nutrition training. So it's, I lost weight doing these things, now I'm going to teach you how to lose weight doing these things. Or I cured my IBS by eating, let's say, pineapple all day long, and that's the only thing that you can eat all day long because it helps with the gastric juices. Sure. So a lot of that anecdotal stuff, which doesn't match up with the evidence-based research.
Right.
So with a lot of those claims, and then money talks, especially for large practitioners where they see that they can get this huge paycheck, maybe from certain companies or brands to endorse something where maybe they don't even use that product.
Right.
but they're given, let's say, $10,000 a post to say that you use the Carey Gold butter. And I know that it tastes great, but you use a Carey Gold butter and you always recommend the Carey Gold butter without looking at that it is high in saturated fat still. And it can, in fact, increase our risk for hypertension, heart disease, all those other factors. So I think it's that combination of people not understanding that there is nutrition professionals who are credentialed and go through all this training similar to a doctor would, matching for internships, and that people are very, very easily swayed by, the money, because money talks.
Yeah, and I think that there's a fertile environment where people want quick fixes.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, you become overweight or clinically obese 1 ounce at a time, right? And you have to reverse that 1 ounce at a time. But I think there are a lot of people who want some type of quick fix, that there's someone out there that has some magic pill or magic wand, that can cure IBS or cure their, obesity. And gosh, I think if you have an audience that's really eager for that type of messaging, snake oil salesmen have been around for centuries, right?
Yeah. I think that's all coming down to the marketing piece of it, because it's very, very hard for me to sell. Like 50% of weight loss is mindset. I can't sell mindset. People don't think it's a mindset thing around their food and nutrition. They think it's an in and out thing, where it absolutely is. You have to be in a calorie deficit to be able to lose weight. But if you're trying to compete against something that has, the magazine racks in the grocery store, lose 75 pounds by Thanksgiving, by doing this one thing, and it's just drinking black coffee constantly. Sure. It's like, okay, I would rather do that one thing than take that road where I know that I have to start exercising. I have to change my nutrition. I might need to look at supplementing my diet if I'm not able to get in all of those nutrition needs. I would much rather take that easy way and not have to do the work. And I don't blame them. It can be time consuming, but we have to look at that bigger picture of, is this helping me or hurting me in the long run?
Right. I mean, you're talking about like fundamental behavioral change.
Absolutely.
Which is very difficult for humans. I mean,
Absolutely.
we are stasis engines, right? I mean, we just want to go on autopilot and do what feels familiar. Not even what feels good or right, but just feels familiar.
Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me because it is so conceptual when you're selling better health or teaching better health, right? You're talking about a future version of yourself where your quality life is improved across many different variables incrementally, right? So it's small changes multiplied across, all these different areas of your life that leads to this overall feeling of wellness and well-being. So maybe you're moving a little bit more freely, you're sleeping a little bit better, your stress response and your blood pressure, all of those things are improved. But that means that every time you sit down to eat or every time you feel a hunger impulse, you have to make the right choice, or at least a different choice than what you've been making.
And I think that comes from the discipline for sure, and then also having the education around it, because my kind of motto with nutrition is I'm going to teach you how to eat for the next 90 years, not the next 90 days, because we have to have that long-term perspective, and not saying that every single meal has to be perfect, but we're still looking for key components on that plate to make sure that you're getting in that variety of nutrients that you need. I have M&M cookies in my house right now. Of course, I'm eating my M&M cookies, but I'm being strategic about it. I'm having one before I go to the gym because it's great for that pre-workout energy boost I need.
Right.
I'm pairing it with my dinner and knowing that, okay, that's going to be part of the carbohydrate that I'm having. And maybe I'm not going to have as many of the French fries or the potatoes that are on my plate so that I can account for it rather than it be in addition to. So it doesn't have to be that it has to be 100% perfect all the time, because that's where we get confused or overwhelmed, or that burnout, which causes many people to fall off the wagon or feel like they have to constantly restart over.
So you mentioned that a lot of this is mindset. And there are, certain gig companies that now approach weight loss or healthy eating completely from a psychological first standpoint, that there's an emotional relationship with food, that there's, I grew up in a state of food insecurity, so like a full belly feeling to me is something that I didn't feel a lot. And when I felt it, I associated that with things going really well. So now, like, I get that feeling, and it's a place I want to get to. And it's probably not good for me to always be getting to a place of a completely filled belly, right? And it's tough to decouple that. So how much of it is discipline? How much of it is first sort of understanding some of your psychological or emotional relationship with food when you're doing your coaching and consulting?
So I always tell our clients, I'm not a therapist. You know, I'm trained in nutrition counseling. I can help you understand that. I can help you with relationship with food. But some of these conversations, especially if it's emotional eating or binge eating, that's a conversation that needs to be had with a licensed mental health counselor. But as far as with working with our clients, we're on autopilot constantly.
Right.
So even just asking them, can you take a minute before you sit down to eat and say, how am I feeling right now? What is my body telling me? Can I put that fork down in between bites, or can I pause before I go and grab another serving of something to make sure that I am listening to my body, and not that we're getting rid of anything, but saying, can I stop before I get to that uncomfortably full feeling? Because your body will start to tell you that you're feeling satisfied. Your tastes change. So I made like a chicken sandwich a couple weeks ago for my husband and I, and it was beautiful. It was delicious. It was on a bun. I made a little sauce for it. I probably got 3/4 of the way through, and I was like, this doesn't taste good anymore.
No.
It doesn't taste as satisfying. It hadn't gone bad, obviously. I just cooked it. That was my body saying to me, you're done. Like, you don't want any more of this. I've had enough.
Right.
We don't listen to that constantly. So just that slowing down piece and saying, can I sit down with my meal? Can I be in the moment? Can I try to make this as balanced as possible? Is a very easy way that we can get started. Yeah. And that it's one of the first things that we'll do with our clients too.
Yeah, gosh. So it's been my experience that I myself, and certainly other people I've had discussions with, their relationship with their body, listening to those small messages, that we're being given. I mean, I blow right through them. I'm part of that clean plate club, where I finish everything, and it's almost a compulsion. And, I go well past the feeling of fullness just to not have as much to clean up. And I eat very quickly. Because there's something in my mind that tells me the longer a meal lasts, the messier it will become, like I might spill something, or, for some reason, if I just get it over quickly, I can clean up and not have to think about that aspect of it. And it has nothing to do with the actual nutrition, the food, taking in the calories to fuel my body. It's more about the, sort of preparation and, just the execution of the meal almost. So it's really, really interesting to me, as I've tried to explore my journey with not just my relationship with my body, but my relationship with food. So I came across this concept recently that said, and I believe in a certain amount of productive sacrifice, productive suffering. I mean, things the choices that we make that seem uncomfortable in the moment, but pay dividends in the future, right? And the discipline can be seen as almost writing a love letter to your future self. How do you coach someone to, if they're having a massive sugar craving, or for one reason or another feel like they need to finish that entire plate? And again, coming from a place where you're not talking about psychological services or resources. What are some of the hacks that someone might think about to try to slow themselves down, to take that beat, to think about how their body feels? Is it just telling them that they should remember to do that, or is there something else that you can kind of build in that helps them?
I think it depends on the person. And the big thing is, I can't coach desire. So I can't make you want your goals. I can't do more work than you do. This is a 50-50 relationship. So if the person is already, I want this, but I don't really want this, they might not be buying into that discipline. Yeah. So that's something to think about, is you really have to want it. You really have to say, like, this is important to me, and why is it important? Right. Exploring that background of, I want to be around for my grandkids. I want to be able to play with them. I want to be able to watch them overnight while my kids go away. So that's a huge piece of it. With the discipline side, it's setting yourself up to be in that moment that you can make those choices. So like you were saying, if you're feeling like with that clean plate club, I have to finish that plate, maybe we're going to swap it for a luncheon size plate, a little bit smaller. There's going to be less food on there. You might be able to cut down how much you're eating just with that smaller plate. maybe it's cutting out the distractions. And that's a huge, huge piece, because we're either working while we're eating, or we're scrolling on our phones, or we're watching TV. Silence, or just eating with somebody else where you can have that conversation, and eating starts to pace itself out a little bit easier, can be a huge, huge benefit to helping you be more mindful and be in that moment. And making sure that all of your food can fit on one plate. Try not to have multiple different plates, because then we lose track of how much have I actually had. There's so much here in front of me, and it's like, well, I've only had small amounts of all these things, when it really adds up maybe to 2 meals in full at that point.
I find myself eating when I'm driving sometimes too. And I mean, I'm already, anytime someone's driving, 50, 60 miles down the highway, you're in a heightened state of arousal, right? I mean, everything, could possibly kill you, or you could, make an error that would cause irreparable damage to your life or someone else's. So you're kind of in this state of just hyper awareness. So you're not, I'm not actively thinking about the food I'm eating. I'm just shoving it into my face, right?
And that's like, that comes down to like the mindless eating of like, you're looking for something to do. So you're definitely probably on autopilot when you're driving, where maybe the next day you're like, I don't remember like how fast I was going, or like, did I take the right exit? How did I get there? Your brain is just saying, I know this sequence, I know where we're going. I'm just going to go to that next thing. And you might also be feeling a little bit of that boredom, because if, let's say, you're on the thruway and there's nothing to look at, it's just trees and trees and trees for miles, you're looking for something to be stimulating. So maybe it's putting on a podcast or listening to your favorite album, but trying to do something else, or calling someone. I love calling people in the car. It's hard to eat and talk and drive at the same time. So that can be another great way too, to kind of just change that up. But it might be that you're on that autopilot, you're looking for something to be mind numbing or something to stimulate you, while there's not a whole bunch stimulating you while you're driving.
Right. And even just thinking about it now, almost anything that I can think of that I eat handheld is not, whole foods based.
Right.
I mean, it's processed. It's, from, even a healthier type of fast food or quicker food. It's still being, mass produced from ingredients which I can't speak to the grade, the long chain, supply chain, food model.
How old the food is.
Exactly. Yeah. So that seems to be a bit of a force multiplier. So if I start to make some of these decisions, or one of your clients does, is that it? I'm done.
It's all about practice. It takes time, and we tell our clients, our most successful clients work with us for 6 to 9 months. I've had clients that have been working with us for 4 years, because it takes time to undo that year's worth of, let's say, dieting or negative self-talk around food or relationship with food, because I can't fix it in 2 sessions. It's something that it takes a good chunk of time to undo that conditioning, or undo that habit eating that maybe you get at 9:30 at night, where maybe one week we're just saying, like, can we not do it one night? Can we switch up our routine? Can you sit at the other end of the couch? So reminding yourself that although it seems so cool and so sexy to lose 10 pounds in a week, it's not realistic. It really is going to be a long time change, and you have to keep doing at it. And it's not so much of being perfect every single day, but can you consistently show up for yourself? Can I consistently just track my food for awareness? Not even looking at it from I need to reduce anything, but having more of that awareness of what am I putting in my body? How often am I eating? What time are these meals? When am I going to bed? Just creating more of that questions around what are my current habits, rather than them being, this is just what I do and here's how it happens.
Yeah, almost like a financial planner. Before you ever start cutting costs or making changes, they tell you just track what you're spending right now. Be aware of where your money is being delegated. And then start making some decisions once you have a larger sample set. And I love that idea of, the quicker the change, the less likely the change will stick. And you mentioned something else about change happening. It's a long time to fix or to change something that you've been doing incorrectly for a long time. I remember working with a coach in the gym, and they said, what, it'll take 1,000 reps to undo something that you've done 1,000 reps incorrectly. You know that it just you've got to build in that motor memory and even the neural pathways that help you get to that outcome.
building autopilot for good in that situation versus building that autopilot in this is the safe place for me. This is the safe area that I want to be in. Where it's safer and easier for me to just pick up Dunkin' on the way into work than it is for me to take maybe that same 5 minutes you'd be in that Dunkin' drive-through line or 20 minutes at Starbucks. Can I make the eggs and can I make the coffee there? We recently got an espresso machine, which has been life-changing, and I have saved so much money on Starbucks and time too, but that's a small change where I can control what type of milk I'm putting into it.
Right.
I can do my own sugar-free syrups. I can control what that serving size is, and I'm getting that time back, where that's now coming second nature for me too.
Yeah. Yeah, the espresso machine was amazing for us when our son was born. Because
shots on demand.
That was it throughout the day, and just kept us going, which was amazing. So what about backsliding? I mean, it's human nature to again, sink to that level of stasis or to return to that autopilot state. Should someone quit if they backslide? Should someone, feel guilty about it? Do you prepare someone that backsliding very well may occur for them? And then, how do you help them transition through that? Yeah.
So this is one of the first things that we talk about. We have like an 8-week small group coaching program where it's really focused on building that nutrition foundation that none of us have. So in that first call, we talk about goal setting and setting the right goals and the timing of them and building on it. But one of the slides in there is talking all about failure and setbacks. We experience 6 setbacks a year with our goals. So that's 6 times that you're kind of challenged of like, am I going to throw in the towel? Am I going to stop doing what I'm going to do? So being aware that that's going to happen. And we see this often as well. There's times of the year where this hits. So end of October, early November, very often, especially with daylight savings time. End of spring, early summer, definitely middle of summer, where we're just like, I don't care. I'm going to drink all of the alcohol by the pool. I want to just do it. I don't want to make any changes. So being aware of that, and also reminding yourself that, can I see where I might be sliding? What have I kind of let go on, or what haven't I been paying attention to? And not that it needs to be that we're making massive change, but coming back to that awareness piece. If you're like, okay, I was losing all of this weight and now I'm steady again, or I've gained. Don't change. Look at what's changed. Can you go back and track a couple days worth of your food? Am I eating more than I was? Have I started going out for coffee now? Am I having dessert every single night? Am I not getting 8 hours of sleep? Am I not drinking water? Am I not taking my multivitamin? Am I not exercising? What's different before I say that now I have to jump to this extreme? So reminding ourselves that those are natural, they're going to happen, and then being prepared of how do I come back to my baseline? Because it's not so much of I've fallen off the wagon and I have to start over again. It's really picking up the pieces, because you haven't forgotten what you learned. Right. It's picking up the pieces and saying, okay, how can I learn from this feedback? Because failure is feedback, and how can I move forward with it? Yeah.
You're reminding me of something that that I learned when I first started trying to get into a daily habit of running. I quickly learned that my mind was just going to fight me, but there would be a couple different walls where my mind was just like, oh, your knees hurt, other mornings would be like, oh, your ankles are hurting, or your lungs just aren't filling enough, for one reason or another. My mind was just like, just stop, just walk, just turn around and go home. And I would fight through these different, I called them kind of like the first exhaustion or the second exhaustion, and really it was the perception of exhaustion more than it was my body was exhausted.
The belief.
Yeah.
Yep. I've done enough.
Yeah. And I found that if I anticipated that was coming, and I just had to keep going to push through it, and then that feeling would dissipate, I knew that there would be these couple walls that I would just need to push myself through. And then I remember talking with people who would just give up at the first sign of their mind.
I'm failed again.
You got it.
I'm always going to be this way. It's 100% a mental thing.
Yeah.
It's that game of, and no one ever reaches out to us being like, I'm doing great with my nutrition. I just want to talk for fun. Right. You always reach out to make change. And it's the same thing too for Timeless. When you're in that period of pain that I need to make a change, like this isn't working for me anymore. And it's the same thing too with those setbacks. So rather than it saying like, I guess I'll just be in pain forever. I'll just, this is just me. I'm going to fail. That's just who I am. Saying, okay, who can I add to my team, or who can I reach out to, or what can I come back to that I know feels really, really good for me, and get over that mental hump, because it's all psychological at that point. Unless your body's breaking down. That's
well, that's the thing too. And certain psychological pains diminish, and sometimes it's quickly. In our field, people have these moments of embarrassment where, they feel, so they're aware that they're not capturing or perceiving all of the speech information they'd like to.
Yep.
Right? Their performance, especially in dynamic listening environments, is evident to them, but they believe it's not evident to anyone else.
Right.
And then they get caught in a moment. They're at a dinner party, the holiday party at their work or whatever it might be, and it's very clear to the whole group that they did not hear what was being said, and so they have these moments of just like, I really need to do something about my hearing. What we find is that if we don't steward them towards action, within days, if not weeks, but usually within days, they'll start to justify a little bit, and they'll just tick off, there's an environment I don't want to be in anymore because I'll become exposed.
Yep.
So they'll start to withdraw and isolate from more and more of these social environments. Do people go through that kind of like, today I feel really bad about my nutrition, but in a couple days, I'm just going to not feel that bad about it anymore?
It always comes and goes. So it's like you said, like, okay, I've been doing really, really well. I'm not having any dessert. I've said no added sugar ever, which is very, very hard to do, especially with the foods that are on the market. And then they go to a family party and there's this huge display of all of these cakes and cookies. And they're like, well, I've been really, really good. Yeah. I'm going to have a couple. And then they get to the point of, I can't stop. And then they have that guilt feeling the next day of like, I overdid it. What am I doing? And then they have that extreme restriction again. And it's that like pendulum effect.
Yeah.
So similar to the hearing example of like, I'm in a lot of, I'm in restriction, or it's like, oh man, I'm doing great, or I'm in that period of pain. And then it's that other side of like, oh man, now I'm going to overdo it because I've been so good, or, it's not that big of a deal. I made progress. I can just cut it out again. It's not, not seeing that it really is a consistent path of, if it's been a problem one time, it's probably going to be a problem again. And especially if it's impacting you and how you're, being with other people and the choices of your own health.
Of course. And then isn't there also a bias, and I forget the name for it, but people may think to themselves, well, I've already had 2 cookies today, so I might as well have that piece of cake, where they just kind of
It's already down the drain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like my diet's shot for the week, so
Right.
I'm just going to, live like there's no tomorrow. I mean, that happens quite a bit too. And I'm sure the rubber band or the yo-yo of the shame and the guilt that comes in behind that is probably even greater because you've eaten to excess or, made the choices that are so far off of what you had determined or identified as the choices that you wanted to make for yourself,
Yeah.
right?
I think it's when we have too black and white thinking with our nutrition, that's where we get that pendulum effect.
Yeah.
So it's saying, if cookies are my big thing and I love cookies and I need to have them around, factoring that into your day rather than it being in addition to, and saying, I know that I'm going to pack a piece of chocolate in my lunch because then I can have the chocolate and it's accounted for and it's part of my day, versus it being, I've been really good, I deserve this chocolate. Because we don't need that I deserve mindset.
Right.
Sure, you can eat anything, but you don't need to earn anything.
Right.
There's no morality to good or to food. It's not good or bad. There's definitely more nutrient dense versus energy dense things.
Right.
But if we can kind of start to see that stuff as neutral and account for it, you're not going to have that pendulum effect.
Well, food as a reward is, not just something that we're taught. I've got a toddler right now, and I will see other people with their kids, or certainly, the way that parenting is depicted as, creating a reward system. You'll get your dessert if you finish your dinner,
Yep.
and it becomes very much a negotiation with the child, but then the child grows into an adult, becomes a negotiation with themselves,
Yep.
right? If I do this, then I'll get that. I'll drink the large draft beer and eat the donuts at the end of the 5K.
Right.
Because I did the work, now I get the reward. So it's really hard to decouple that, especially when we just have this pervasive marketing messaging around us at all times. The movies we watch, the TV we watch, everything we interact with. The commercials are just hideous.
Yeah.
About depicting food as a reward. The Mountain Dew is the fuel and the reward
Right.
to mountain biking,
Yeah.
Or the Doritos, they taste so good. You're going to be doing something that, your taste buds will explode.
Yeah. Red Bull gives you wings.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want wings?
Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing. So there's, I think people in a lot of ways can be set up for failure because of this unintended consequence, but a very linear pathway of sort of a capitalist social economy, and how it impacts in trying to engage with and activate consumers, right?
We're conditioned.
Yeah.
That's 100% what it is. I have some elementary school teachers as clients, and one of them is very, very mindful of that because she grew up with a really, really tough relationship with food, where food was always the reward. And now she sees some of the other teachers in her grade that she teaches, they use like Skittles. So if the kid gets a question right, they get a Skittle. And she's like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
At Halloween time and Christmas time, she's like, I don't give them candy. I don't give them food. They get enough of that stuff.
Right.
I'm giving them glow sticks because they get so excited, and I'm giving them these little toys that they can play with because they don't need me to give them some of those things, and for them to be in that same position that I was, and now I'm struggling with my relationship with food.
Yeah.
So it's 100% a conditioning thing, and then you have all of that noise from the commercials and social media and advertising everywhere that's muddying all of those waters of like, well, of course I'm going to go and have the Mountain Dew because it tastes great and you have that mouthfeel and it fills you up. But what are we getting out of it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, spike in the blood sugar, some stimulation effect, which, feels great, right? There's euphoria there to it, but there's a crash that comes after it.
Absolutely.
But it's really hard, So we try not to feed our 3-year-old foods that are high in sugar. But when we're going to birthday parties and they're serving cake, I mean, there's an implicit message that we're celebrating. Cake comes with celebration, right? So it's something that I think it just reminder to myself, just like good parenting is like honest and open conversations, about like why these things exist,
And maybe it doesn't have to be in the vacuum of like, oh, those are only things that we have at that time.
Right.
I know plenty of other dietitians, and I don't have children yet, but they say like, I'll serve the dessert with the meal. So it doesn't have that connotation of you need to eat what's on the plate here, and you're probably not happy about what's on the plate, especially 3-year-olds can be picky, 5-year-olds can be picky, 10-year-olds can be picky. Of normalizing that this is part of the meal. And if you choose to eat it first, that's fine. But we're having it with other foods.
Right.
It becomes less of that, oh my gosh, maybe, your 3-year-old is like, I never have cake at home. And then we're put in that environment where there's so much birthday cake because everyone overbuys it.
Right.
Where, Mom, I want 2 slices. Can I have 3? Can we bring some home?
Yeah.
Of normalizing that stuff can really help with getting rid of that good and bad mentality, or I have to earn it, or it's only something that like in a special occasion, can I get it? Because then we start to create more of that craving pathways of, I'm not feeling great right now. I'm having a depressive episode. Or I'm feeling anxious, that I need something to numb this feeling that I'm having. And a lot of that starts in childhood with that relationship with food. Yeah.
But at some point, those children grow up to become adults.
Yep.
Right. And they can self-educate.
Yeah.
They can seek out this information. They end up stumbling across Nourished with Emily. And you talked about motivation. So I like what you said. It reminded me of a baseball coach I had when I was younger. And he said, I can teach you the fundamentals of getting down to pick up a ground ball. But if you don't want to get in front of that ground ball, you're not going to do it, no
100%.
matter how much you know the fundamentals, right?
Yep.
So how do you vet a client and just say, you're not motivated enough for us? Do you ever say that? Or is it something where they show up and they say, I'm going to need a little bit of motivation. I've got self-motivation, but I'm also going to need some help from you. I mean, what is that relationship like? And who isn't the right client for you?
So the accountability is a huge piece for people, and that can really help with motivation. And we have a conversation with all of our clients before working with us, before them signing on, before any money is exchanged, because I want them to know that our philosophy is very different from anything that you've tried before. And it's normal to feel skeptical. It's normal to feel scared, but give us a try, because I think you're going to feel so much better. I mean, people's energy increases within the first 10 days of working with us. So making sure that they have that understanding of, I'm not giving you a meal plan. I'm not going to put you on a 1,200 calorie diet. I'm not going to take away your favorite foods. Let's talk about how to incorporate those things and why these balanced plates are so important. And I've had clients that have said, you know what, this just doesn't feel like the right thing for me. And that's perfectly fine. And we can definitely get the vibe from our clients too on that, that call. But for many of them, they get to that point, and when they reach out and they fill out that form for a contact, they say, you know, I'm tired of trying all the things. I'm tired of doing all the things. I haven't done this. I haven't worked with a professional before. I want to give this a try, and I'm going to give it a real honest try, and really setting that expectation for clients too on that first call and telling them it's going to be 6 to 9 months. I can't change this overnight. So I think them coming in with that expectation definitely helps to make them better clients, and that understanding too of like, this is a conversation between us. Like, I'm not a dictator. I'm not going to tell you have to have yogurt every single day for breakfast. I can give you some ideas, but let's make this a conversation so that you can get the most out of this and you can be your own dietitian at the end of it. So there's definitely times where it just doesn't feel like the right fit, and that's completely okay, because I want myself and my team and the client too to be excited going into those calls versus the like, oh man, I got to meet with Emily again. And she's going to tell me that I need to sleep more and I just can't sleep right now, anything like that.
And so is it your experience that some of those clients will just self-select out, more than you end up just saying, hey, let's put a pause on this and maybe start again in the future when you're more ready? I
think it's like a 50-50. So we have like a 6-month package where they've committed to that 6 months. And I think it's a little bit easier for them to say, I'm going to give it time at that point. Though clients can work with us on a month-to-month basis. We do require a 30-day notice on ending. And sometimes it's working through that, like, okay, I'm feeling really frustrated right now, and like understanding why, and maybe having them do journal prompts on it. But there are some clients that say, like, I just need to pause. This is a little bit, I don't have the time right now, which is a huge thing for people because it does take time, or I don't have the energy, or they're not 100% sold on it. And that's completely okay. Because I don't want you feeling like I'm just going to show up and do 50% of the work. Like, it's a relationship with both of us. I'm there to give you the accountability. I'm going to check in with you in between calls. I'm going to give you all of those resources, but I can't do the work for you at the end of the day. So if you're not motivated or you're not buying in, I can't do the work. I can't make the weight loss happen or the lifestyle change happen or to correct your labs if you're not going to do the work.
And good on them for showing up, even if it's a little bit too early for them to really take on this journey with a full heart and a clear mind and a level of commitment that's going to get them the results that they want. Because at least they're starting to identify and they're still maybe working through the psychological mechanisms of commitment.
They're in that contemplative state of change.
Yeah, and, exactly.
Often, sometimes we'll get referrals from doctors and we'll reach out to these people and we'll say like, hey, you've been referred, I'd love to set up an appointment. And they're like, nope, I'm not interested. So they're in that pre-contemplative. They don't see that there's a problem. They're not motivated by it. But I would say many people are in that contemplative or even ready for that action stage where they're like, on that first call where we're just kind of going through like what we need from you for that first appointment. They're like, well, what's my goal for today? And I'm like, I love you. Like, yes, exactly. Let's get started now.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know if it's a Confucius or some type of ancient axiom. I believe it is, but when you're ready to learn the lesson, a teacher will appear for you, right? Those things. But I imagine even with getting referrals from doctors, because it's one thing to have, this private agency that you've created, which is just amazing. I mean, I love every bit of content that I've been interacted with, mostly on LinkedIn, but it's on all social platforms and on your website, which is beautiful and well laid out. That people are coming to you. There's even for them to pick up the phone, to fill out a form fill, to direct message you through one of these social platforms. They're kind of at a stage where they're open. But when someone is sent to you as a referral, they may be in that pre-contemplative state.
Absolutely.
You may come across someone who is still in the throes of disordered eating, and they're maybe, more shameful about it and still hiding it from the people who know them best, to a certain degree from themselves. If you think about the way we kind of, have this duplicity sometimes where it's like, who's the person when the shades are drawn and the doors are locked, and how am I going to have my relationship with food then versus how do I project myself when I'm in more of a social situation? So when those referrals come in, so it sounds like you go to do this initial consultation or outreach, and some of them say, hey, thanks, no thanks. Some may say, yeah, this seems like a good idea. The doctor said you might be calling, so let's go ahead and move forward. And then others where maybe it's a mixed bag, and you're like, this person needs more help than getting started on a nutrition plan with a dietitian. Do you refer out or maybe just kick them back to the referring physician and say, I think, maybe they should go see a psychologist first or consider something else?
Yeah. A conversation always needs to be had. Although I refer often to the area therapists, psychologists, people can, especially if you don't have the rapport with them yet, if you say like, you sound great, love to work with you, and I want you to work with a psychologist. They're like, whoa.
Defense is up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're already coming after my food, and then you're telling me that I'm bad or I'm wrong. So it's something that I can definitely communicate with a doctor of just like, hey, I'm hearing this very often in this conversation with them or this initial conversation. What have you guys talked about, or what other information can I provide to you, or do you want me to focus on with them? Yeah. Because sometimes it's just having that conversation where maybe they have seen a therapist in the past, or they've seen 20 therapists in the past and they just can't find the right one for them. And they're kind of at that crossroads of like, well, let's give this a try. So I would say I'm always excited when I see a client that already has a therapist and they're getting that help. But it has to be a conversation that's broached slowly and carefully, and definitely after you're able to build that rapport.
Yeah.
Because it can feel like an attack for sure.
How do you coach? What are the reminders for yourself? And maybe how do you coach some of the other members of your team? Because you've got a growing team, to be sensitive, because sometimes if we enter a dialogue, an initial discovery conversation with a potential client, if we're not aware that some of the things and the way we might position them might be off-putting, and that's window shopping, right? I mean, that's the initial contact with your organization. I mean, how do they prepare themselves? How do you prepare yourself for having that initial conversation? Is it softening a bit? Is it trying to come to a place of understanding or empathy? How do you do it? Because it's such a unique and personal and fraught with emotions and all these different dynamics, people's relationship with food.
Yeah. It's with any of like the initial calls before they're working with us one-on-one, I always just like to say like, hey, how's it going? How was your day? Do anything fun and exciting this weekend? Not to come in and like, all right, let's get rid of all this stuff right now. Yeah. And also,
I heard you eat horribly.
Right, exactly. So your doctor says. But just to say to them, tell me your nutrition story. What got you to this point? Why are you here? And people will be like, oh, it's such a long story. It's like, I don't care. I've got time. I book time off in my calendar to talk to you. Like, I want to hear it because this helps me. And also make sure that I can pair you with, whether it's myself or, another member of my team, make sure that you are working with that right person. And then also remembering that disclosure is disarming. So when I have someone who has talked about a history of disordered eating in the past and they, are in recovery now and that they feel better, sometimes I'll share my own story as well, that I had an eating disorder when I was in high school and nutrition was really hard for me. And it was very scary when I went to go see the first dietitian that I saw, who then inspired me to be a dietitian. But it helps them say like, I'm not perfect either. Like my relationship with food is something that I'm constantly working on. And you would be surprised at some of the foods that I eat, that I'm not going to be that person who says like, eat salads. Could I eat salads too? Yeah. So that disclosure I think is really important. And then also making sure that we're matching up our clients with the right person. So I have another dietitian that works with me, Emily. She is excellent, has done a lot of work and training into intuitive eating, which is great for people who have a history of disordered eating or relationship with food that might be struggling. They would be a great client for her because she has that training and that understanding and she can connect with them really well. Right. Whereas Sarah, our other dietitian, she is awesome with like renal and diabetes stuff and giving you that nutrition education that's digestible and easy to do. Where maybe their relationship with food, or they're not looking for weight loss, they just want to feel better and change these labs. She would be a great person for them because she's excellent at that stuff and getting into the science piece of it. So making sure that you're pairing the person with the right coach or right dietitian for them. And then also reminding them that you're human as well too, that you're in the same boat that they are. We're just there to help facilitate this journey.
So you bring up a great point. And again, it's very unique, and there's so many external factors, cultural factors. But what are the trends that you're witnessing in people's relationship with food, or the nutrition choices they're making, or the help that they're looking for? Maybe when they're in their 20s, in their 30s, as they age into their 40s, 50s, and your clients that are in their 60s, or maybe clients who have been in agencies or institutions that you've worked with in the past. What are some of those, and are there trends that you notice that we kind of all flow through as we age?
I think we're starting to get more into and aware of that I need individualized, especially for the people, let's say that they, became adults in the 90s and the early 2000s with a lot of the low fat craze of the 90s and then, demonizing sugar and all of that. They've tried a lot of those blanket things where they're like, okay, that this didn't work for me. I'm still kind of in this boat. I need something that's more personalized, which is great. I am seeing more and more women, especially in their 50s and 60s, saying like, I've been on Weight Watchers for 40 years. Right. I hate that I'm on Weight Watchers for 40 years. I don't understand it. Right. So they're really educated, or they're wanting to be educated in this. And they're saying like, okay, I've never worked with a professional on this. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a registered dietitian. So they're excited and want that individualized approach. Yeah. On the diet side of things, I'm seeing more and more people try to engage in carnivore, which, gout is a huge, huge side effect of carnivore diet, along with high cholesterol, high triglyceride levels, which is definitely not great as we age, especially for women going through perimenopause and menopause with a dropping estrogen level. They're at higher risk for heart disease, and that's why heart disease is so prevalent for women. And then they're engaging in things like this, which is going to increase their risk, and they're also not getting as many nutrients as they can be either. So I think we're seeing a bigger trend towards that, having that one-on-one relationship with someone so that you can have that conversation. Because I think especially after COVID, we missed that. We missed that like connection with somebody to have that. And that the willingness and the understanding of like, I have to take that time. I got to undo that year's worth of stuff that I've been convinced I had to do because of the diet culture that's out there.
Right.
I had a family friend reach out a few weeks ago, and she was saying that she was recently diagnosed with osteoporosis. Now, very, very common for women, especially once again, as estrogen levels are dropping, the body isn't great at preserving bone mass. And you build your bone between the ages of 0 to 20, you maintain it from 20 to 40 and then beyond. If you're not getting enough calcium in, you could be losing your bone density.
The raw material just isn't there.
Exactly. So she had done Weight Watchers for the past 20, 25 years. And she is now dealing with osteoporosis because Weight Watchers, at least when she was doing it, was very anti-dairy, which is the main source of calcium in our diet. Yeah. So just that side effect of like, now we're realizing like, oh, maybe these things weren't as healthy as I thought they could be. And now I'm having these issues where like bone density doesn't come back.
Right.
Once it's gone, it's gone. We have to be really aware of that too.
Right. And, your bone mass, as we age, these are key indicators for all different sorts of potential outcomes later in life, including cognitive decline, having catastrophic falls,
right?
That just cause irreparable harm, both physically and from a quality of life standpoint. It's really interesting. So one, in education for people that are going into counseling, one of the things that they recommend you do when first working with a client is to try to socially locate them, right? Mm-hmm. What are their cultural backgrounds? And the piece that you're talking about is almost, and this is part of social localization, is like, what's their chronology, right? Mm-hmm. So these women in their 50s that were South Beach, Atkins,
yep.
There are all sorts of, 30 years later, these downstream impacts, and then of course the carnivore piece. I'm sure you're seeing a lot of people who have tried to yo-yo with, ketosis
yes.
as much as they can.
Yes.
And, that's a highly restrictive
Absolutely.
Diet coming from standard American into trying to put your body into a state of ketosis as much as possible. And people binge off of that restriction so much. It's amazing. And I find that to be fascinating, that you can follow someone's history and then take a look at the social cues that were available to them, or the prevailing sentiment about food and dieting that was available to them in these specific periods of time, which is fascinating.
And even, let's say the 90s, of course, the, low-fat craze and all of that, or the Atkins, South Beach, especially for women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. I experienced this with some of the women in my own life. We get to be very mean to ourselves. Oh my gosh. For example, like my mother-in-law, like she's a beautiful woman. We went and when we got married, she went and got her dress and everything. And she was just attacking herself the entire time of just like, my arms are too big. Do you think I can get my chin done? And it's like, where did the confidence go? You know, like not having that anymore. And I think it's because it's a byproduct of all of this dieting that we've done or this messaging that we've heard of for the last so many years where you've been told you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And then you look at, you know, what was popular in the early 2000s. It was like the really, really thin models with low-waisted jeans, which like nobody looks good with low-waisted jeans on. Yeah. But we still have that idea of, you know, that's what I need to look like. And that we're not nice to ourselves.
Right. So where's the balance, right? I mean, there's so much about, you know, the body positivity movement that's tried to take someone like, this is your mother-in-law, right? And, you know, have her be, you know, more confident or proud of or accepting of those problem areas and I'm air quoting just in case, you know, people are listening only, you know, versus not really popularizing a body mass index that is unhealthy,
right?
You know, which I think a lot of people look at body positivity movement and say, okay, but where is it excessive, and when do we start popularizing getting back to, you know, a state of health and something that, you know, is going to impact your longevity health wise. So what is that balance?
It's tough for sure. And I think part of it is doing work kind of in your own self-worth as well, because, you know, she had 2 kids. So like that's going to change your body for sure. And then also too, menopause is going to change your body as well. So being aware of that stuff and then reminding yourself as well that even though you may not have that purpose of maybe, you know, she's retired, so she's not working anymore, you know, she's going through some health issues of you still have value and you still have purpose. It's not that any of that has changed, you know, maybe as you've gotten into a larger body, as you've aged, but you still have that value and we have to find that spark, and it's never too late to make any changes. And maybe it's like, well, I just want a quick fix. Like I'm so sick of trying. It's like, try something different though. Is it the same 5 things that you've been trying for the last 20 years that research shows us for every restrictive diet that you try, you lose the weight, you gain it back plus 3 to 5 pounds.
Wow.
So I've experienced this with my own practice with some clients where they've been on 10 restrictive diets over the past 3 years. They've gained 33 pounds throughout that entire time.
Yeah, like
so
clockwork.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's just part of the body trying to figure it out. So it's saying, can I get rid of this restriction? Can I undo all of those behaviors that we've been talking about? And can I come back to the basics and figure out? We have a client that's down over 100 pounds. She's 67. She looks like a completely different person. She looks 15 years younger than when she started. And she is eating more than when she started with us. Well,
for how many people, and that's a great point, for how many people is the calorie deficit reached through more exercise and body movement rather than by making substantial changes to their nutrition?
Many. Okay. So many. So it's harder for us to say like you can only eat 1,200 calories a day because A, you're starving all the time. And it's just not realistic too, as far as with the foods and things that we have available. So if we can say like, I'm going to have you move more and I'm going to get you to eat more, because many of us aren't eating enough. So often do we see clients come to us and they're eating 800 to 1,000 calories a day. Metabolic adaptations are occurring. Your body is saying, we got to spare as much as we possibly can. We have to become really, really good at digestion and all of these energy usage things. Yeah. That way we're not expending anything else. And we have to really slowly build back that metabolism through increasing your intake, through increasing your muscle mass, through increasing exercise, where you can then see these losses and be eating. She was eating probably 1,200 calories or so when she came to us, was so resistant on that first call when we said, we need you to eat more. Right. She's eating over 1,800 calories, not 18,000, but eating over 1,800 calories a day, exercises maybe 2 to 3 times a week, and over 100 pounds down. Yeah. Crazy.
It's amazing. Yeah. Just activating that internal engine.
Yeah.
And most chronic illnesses that are that people in their 50s, 60s, and later are being treated for, actively treated, and believe me, we engage with a lot of primary care physicians. I mean, their waiting rooms are filled with people, and you know those people are taking multiple prescriptive medications,
9+.
And most of the conditions that they're contending with are metabolic disease.
Yep. It's lifestyle-related things because they weren't taught nutrition. They weren't taught that healthy lifestyle. You know, my parents grew up with their parents, were born during the Depression. So my dad always jokes that my grandmother used to feed the 4 of them off of a singular chicken breast. So it was very clean plate club when I was little because that's what they were taught. Right. You know, unfortunately, I went to school and my parents are both healthy and they're both active, where they've educated themselves too with nutrition and exercise and all of that. But a lot of the things that I saw in the nursing home when I was working there, and that you and I are both seeing in doctors' offices, are lifestyle-related things that if we had that education or we had that support, we would not be dealing with.
This brings up a really good point, and you were alluding to it a little while ago, talking about Weight Watchers. Wouldn't the right type of supportive program, rehabilitative program, which I think a lot of what you do is education-based, but then a lot of it is rehabilitating.
100%. Yep.
It should wean its clients off of its platform, right?
Yes.
It should be it should be up to Weight Watchers to get people to stop using Weight Watchers.
But they have lifetime members.
Right.
Yeah, because there are very few studies on the long-term success of Weight Watchers, Optavia, any of those super restrictive diets, because you have to keep engaging in it.
Right.
You have to stay on Weight Watchers. You have to stay in their lifetime membership program in order for you to be able to maintain your weight.
Right.
So what are we teaching people at that point? I don't understand points. They make zero sense. They're changing them constantly.
Yeah.
I ask clients who've been on it, I was like, do you understand what the points are? And she's like, nope, I know I could have 23 of them. I'm like, how do we get there? So we're not helping us. And that's why I say too, our clients graduate.
Right.
Our clients, I want them to be their own dietitian at the end of it. I want them to say I know exactly what I need to do. I've lost the weight. I've kept it off. I feel great.
Yeah.
Graduation is a huge piece of it.
Yeah. And having an end goal in place, right? It's not having someone to be living with this thing into perpetuity. It just, I think someone is probably much more likely to give up if it's never supposed to end.
Right.
That just seems so interesting to me.
We like that pacing. We like that something is coming, it's on the horizon, this is coming towards me.
Yeah.
And I think when you make someone basically raise their hand and say, I'm going to be struggling with my weight forever, I'm always on Weight Watchers, that's demoralizing.
Yeah, I imagine it is. So what are 3 to 5 quick fixes, and I don't want to say quick fixes, but what are the things that people should be thinking about if they wanted to make an active change today, knowing that it's a long-term commitment and knowing that, the results are going to take time, but what are some changes that almost everybody listening could make that would have them feeling better, maybe see, a change in their body mass composition, if not a change on the scale, maybe their clothes feel a little bit better, but what are some things that, might be the quick hits that you begin many of your clients with?
Yeah, the lowest hanging fruit is what we call it.
Go.
So hydration is one of the biggest and easiest things. So I like to come at it, especially in the beginning, of what can I add to my routine versus taking it away. So if we're already not drinking enough water, I had someone yesterday say she only drinks 16 ounces of water.
Wow.
I'd be like, I'm in a desert at that point.
I'm going to take a drink right now.
Right. So the hydration is a huge piece of it. So if you can drink at least half of your weight in ounces, and yes, this will be a little bit different for everyone depending on their body size, but that's a really, really great start. And you're going to feel so much better, less bloating, less swelling, better digestion, less constipation, very important. Sleep is so important. And it's one of the most underrated things that people are very easy just to throw aside because I'm watching a show or I'm binge watching, whatever it is. But taking your phone, not putting it in your room, not turning the TV on, trying to get 8 hours in bed, research has shown it's easier for you to lose weight and keep it off when you have that downtime. Because there's less of that stimulation from the commercials on TV telling you that it's time to go take a snack break, or in between the football game where it's now you can order groceries. Turn that stuff off, get that rest and recovery time because your body needs it. Moving more, even if it's just 10 minutes. If you go out and just take your dog around the block versus just letting them run out back to go to the bathroom, easy way that you're increasing your heart rate. You're going to build more of that cardiac tolerance. You're burning more calories. And I would say it's a 2-part one. Eating consistently. Ideally, we're eating something every 3 to 4 hours. That's really going to be helpful with making sure that you're not getting to that point of I'm ravenous, I'm going to eat everything in my pantry, and then making sure that plate has balance. So we like to say we're looking for PCC, protein, carb, and color. Those are the 3 things we want on every single plate to give you the fullness, to give you the energy, and to give you that help as far as with the micronutrient support from those vitamins and minerals in the fruits and vegetables.
We'll come back to micronutrients in a moment because I've got some hearing-related questions I want to ask you about. But are all proteins and all carbs created equal? And when you're talking about low-hanging fruit, is it let's just get to this balanced plate with the PCC before we talk about quality, origin, composition, those sort of things?
Yeah. So with the quality, as far as with proteins and carbohydrates, of course, the less processed they are, the more naturally occurring nutrients they're going to have. Those naturally occurring nutrients are easier for us to absorb and utilize in the body. So would I much rather have you have a brown rice or let's say a quinoa versus a highly processed white bread? Yes, 100%, because you're going to get more nutritional bang for your buck out of it. Same thing too with the proteins. There are different ones. They're going to provide different things for us. So with more of the animal products, so let's say those red meats, you're going to get more of that zinc, selenium, copper, because we get that from the soil. They eat the grass that's there. But if we're having more of those like fishes and even some of the not animal-based proteins like soybeans, tofu, we're still going to be getting some of those heart-healthy fats. And it's still a great source of protein where we want that variety with it all. So it's looking at, can I go with more of the lessly processed things? And if I can't, can I just focus on the portion size of what I'm having? If it's a for convenience or time thing, can I focus on the portion size and can I be mindful of what's on my plate?
You talked a little bit about carnivore diet earlier and some of the negative impacts of sort of going all in on certain nutrient types or at least food product types. Does veganism carry some of those same pitfalls?
So it depends on what your motivation is. I've had clients that are vegans and they are doing it for an ethical reason, but they're very intentional about what they eat. They're very on top of, they know that they have to take a B12 supplement because we get a majority of our B12 through animal products, where there are also the vegans where they're like, I'm being healthy. I'm not eating meat. I'm not eating animal products, where it's more of like a dirty vegan, where I don't like that term, but it's like, I'm going to eat Oreos and chips all the time because those are vegan.
I had someone say French fries were vegan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Bread can technically be vegan too. Not that bread's bad at all, but with that approach, you have to ask yourself, what's my reason for doing it? Right. Do I have that buy-in and do I see myself doing this forever? And it's the same thing too with carnivore. Sure, anytime you cut back calories, you're going to lose weight. But if you're someone who has a history of hypertension, heart disease, high blood pressure, atherosclerosis, especially fatty liver disease, if you have, gout, a history of gout, you are asking for all of those things to be increased by engaging in things like that.
I imagine you're also playing some serious games with your gut microbiome as well.
Absolutely.
And even like the protein receptors through which the nutrients pass in your intestine, and that's where things like leaky gut start to happen. And a lot of that is controlled by the choices you're making at the dinner table, right?
Yep. Yeah. I had a client who decided to do carnivore briefly recently, and I said, not happy about it, but I'm here to support you. I need you to be taking a multivitamin because you're not getting any of the B vitamins, vitamin C, for some of the fat soluble vitamins just from eating the meat. And then he texted me like a week later and he's like, I've got the meat sweats and I'm not even doing anything. And I was like, yeah, it's your body saying like, this isn't working for me. Yeah. He's like, yeah, my joints hurt too. It's like, that's your body saying, I can't do this. This is not right for me.
If you're not sitting in a sauna right now, that's the wrong response for your body, right? All right, I do want to come back to supplementation because I'm sure folks have questions like I do. But in immersing myself in the latest research that's available about the way that people develop, live with, and then treat their hearing loss, I was very surprised to come across just how important nutrition and the important role that nutrition can play in the development of hearing loss. So here are a couple statements that were published in the trade journal Nutrients, which I'm sure is very well read in nutrition circles. But let me just state some facts here, and then let's talk about it. So nutritional factors can affect a variety of diseases, such as hearing loss in humans. Thus far, several studies have evaluated the association between nutrition and hearing. These studies found that the incidence of hearing loss was increased with the lack of single micronutrients such as vitamin E, B, C, D, E, zinc, magnesium, selenium, iron, iodine. So these are trace minerals. These are naturally occurring vitamins in all age groups. So it doesn't matter how old you are, but especially in children, A, C, E, zinc, and iron make children especially vulnerable to middle ear infections, and permanent damage and hearing loss can occur if the acute and chronic symptoms of these middle ear infections are not resolved quickly. High carbohydrate, high fat, high cholesterol intake, carnivore, lower protein intake, veganism, by individuals correspond with poor hearing status. So this might not even be an irreversible damage causing hearing loss, but just your ability to perceive and to process speech information can be impacted by what you're eating, especially if it's on these either hyper restrictive or a glut on certain food types. Higher consumption of polyunsaturated fatty acids corresponds to better hearing status.
Healthy fats.
So, I mean, that's your fishes and avocados and
Seeds,
coconut oil,
nuts.
seeds. And in addition to malnutrition, obesity is reported to be a risk factor for hearing loss. And of course, anytime you mess with the rate and the effectiveness of your blood flow, and that could be obesity, could be diabetes, any of these things.
Nerve damage.
I mean,
all those things.
And our whole hearing system is based on nerve signaling, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, hearing loss is actually a neurodegenerative condition where you're just not getting the proper signaling through your audiovestibular nerve. So, you found these things to be interesting, you know, as we were doing a little bit of pre-episode, pre-recording discussions. Tell me some of your thoughts about this.
Not surprised about the children and the higher incidence of the middle ear infections with the lack of vitamins A, C, E, and iron.
Yeah.
Those are powerful antioxidants. Vitamins A, C, and E are all antioxidants, which help to boost and maintain our immune system. Yeah. When we are having highly processed foods, we're losing a lot of those things. A and E are both fat-soluble vitamins. You're probably not going to be able to get your kids to eat nuts or, you know, like let's say put extra olive oil on things. And iron is one of the nutrients of concern for children. Many kids are iron deficient. I worked at WIC one time too before going full-time in my business. And that was one thing that we checked was the hemoglobin and hematocrit levels was iron.
Yeah.
Because that can also really impact brain development and growth and all of that.
Course.
Also not surprised either with the higher intakes of carbohydrates, cholesterol, saturated fat foods, thinking as well, I don't know the ages of the people in the study, but if they're, let's say, between the ages of 50 and 70, probably that same thing coming back to the low-fat craze of the 90s, where we got rid of a lot of fat in the food, we increased the carbohydrates, and it didn't really change the calorie count.
Right.
So we're still overeating on those things, but having that idea of, I'm being healthy, there's no fat in here.
Right.
And we also then got rid of the polyunsaturated fats that can help with maintaining hearing.
Yeah.
So not surprising at all. And you 100% can be of normal body size and be undernourished or malnourished, all depending on the food choices that we're having and the quality of the food that we're eating.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. Again, just those choices that were derived in a laboratory, and then so the makeup of the food, those choices derived in a laboratory and then presented to the population as if it were healthy, right? It's like we need to change the composition of the food by reducing the fat, but we need to increase the carbohydrates because we can't change the flavor profile.
Yeah.
We can't have you eating something that you don't like, right? So it's super, super fascinating to me. And then based on your understanding, why is it that processed foods can't have the same profile of micronutrients?
With the processing, you lose it. So you go from, let's say, that grain of wheat or an oat to change it into something else. And with that processing, you're breaking down a lot of those nutrients. Think of it this way. If you're making a smoothie and you're putting in yogurt and you're putting in, berries, you did a cup of raspberries, and a cup of raspberries has 8 grams of fiber. Yeah. You're processing it. You're breaking down those raspberries with the blender. You're getting rid of that fiber. You went from 8 grams of fiber to 1 gram of fiber. Very similar in that same way with the processing of the food that we have, because you have to take it from that original form, which might have a great amount of micronutrients depending on the soil, the sourcing. Many of our foods that we find in the grocery store travel on average 1,500 miles to get to where you are buying them. Yeah. So there's a lot of nutrient loss that happens over that time too, when things are sitting and then become overly ripe. So it's the processing piece is where we lose a lot of those things. And there are laws, the fortification and enrichment laws, that through processing, anything that was lost, especially with our grain products, they have to add it back in. So if you're looking at the package of cereal, you'll see iron's added. Why is iron added? Because there was iron in there, but they lost that during processing and they have to add it back in. Same thing too with the B vitamins. But it's not naturally occurring. Yeah. So will it be absorbed? Yes, but it may not be absorbed as well as if you were to have like, steel cut oats that you did yourself or you picked up yourself.
And that's that idea of bioavailability, right?
Yes.
So just because they're adding it back in, it could be from a completely different source or in a completely different form.
Right. It could be D2 where your body doesn't use D2. Your body changes all D2 into D3.
Right.
Where you'd want it to be D3 because it's the most bioavailable and absorbable.
But on the ingredients label, vitamin D is vitamin D, right?
Right. Yeah.
At least at a very quick glance.
Right. Or folic acid is folic acid and not folate. Right. It's the same thing, but it's in a different structure.
Right. It's like most, and I may be getting this wrong, but many vitamin C supplements are a certain type of citrate that doesn't even help to boost immune function. And
mega doses of vitamin C do nothing for your immunity.
wow.
So consistent doses of vitamin C can, because then you're maintaining that level. Vitamin C and all the B vitamins are water-soluble vitamins. Yeah. You have to have them consistently in your diet every single day in order to reach your needs. Right. But your body only takes what you need and you pee out the rest. So if you've been doing 2 emergencies a day because you are so concerned that you're going to be getting sick this time of year or next year, or just doing it to kind of maintain your immunity, you have really expensive urine because you're not absorbing it.
I love it.
Women need 75 milligrams, men need 90. Yeah. What are you doing with 2,000 milligrams?
Yeah. So you're not
peeing it out.
Technically increasing your resilience. Although there may be some psychosomatic or placebo
Maybe you're
effect,
making better choices when you do it. You're drinking more water, so you're getting more hydrated. But
But once you've cycled and processed what was available at the time, it's into your refuse system.
Yeah.
Right? And
it all goes away. The only thing that you will store will be the fat soluble vitamins and some of those micro minerals as well. So it is very possible for you to reach like a tolerable upper limit. Right. So we were talking with a client this morning and she has a almost, I think 4-month-old and she's exclusively breastfeeding. They were saying, we want you to supplement vitamin D. So she's asking us like how much vitamin D to give her. So we're looking through the book just to verify and everything. And it's 400 IUs for this 4-month-old baby. But the tolerable upper limit is 1,000 IUs, and that's because vitamin D is stored in the body. So we can then overdo it on some of those things, especially with supplementation for that fear, and then you can get toxicity syndrome or toxicity symptoms of things. So like when people have too much vitamin A, you start to see their skin kind of change colors a little bit. Okay. Or you have too much selenium, your skin will slough off.
Wow.
Yeah, scary stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
More isn't always better.
Yeah. So let's talk about supplementation because you mentioned it with specific diets. You're going to make recommendations, but I know that supplementation is probably not something that, from a very general standpoint, you are recommending to get someone to a good nutrition plan or a good nutritional habit. You want them to get more of that from their foods. Right. So which ones, when, and how much supplementation is something that you're making recommendations for?
So just remember, supplements are always meant to supplement a healthy diet. They're not meant to replace things. So you may need a supplement if you are someone who is vegan and you can't get in the B12 because you don't eat any of those animal products. That makes sense. Or if you are somebody who might have, let's say, an issue tolerating or you don't like certain vegetables, you won't eat any of like the reds. You're like squashes are disgusting. You're not getting natural sources of vitamin A. You might need to get it in then through supplement form. So we can always help with that. Our software will show us kind of what you're hitting on average. Are you meeting those needs? We can even set those needs too as goals inside of our platform. But I don't recommend going out and getting the super mega 1,000% of your daily value of something when you may not even need it. Right. Because once again, expensive urine. Yeah. And you could also be hurting yourself more than helping yourself. Yeah. If you can get it through food first, great. But maybe you would need, if you don't like yogurt, you don't do any fermented foods, probiotics can definitely be of help to you for, gut microbiome health, for women's health overall, preventing, bacterial infections, yeast infections, all of that stuff. If you don't do a lot of fruits and vegetables, or you've got young kids that are very, very picky eaters, giving them a 1-a-day multivitamin might be a great thing just to kind of help make sure they're still getting the nutrients that they need without having those risks of like I'm developing without enough iron or something like that.
All right. So body mass composition, circumference ratios, by which clinical obesity is diagnosed, people being overweight, right? That's one possible outcome of the wrong nutritional choices. But, you're saying that we should also be looking for other markers. I mean, rashes, different things developing on our skin, bags under our eyes, maybe the skin around our face is a little bit more puffy, or maybe a little bit more, drawn, or maybe even sagging. So, these are all things that can be resolved by making some of these better choices?
It can't be. Usually it's not like I eat one meal and it's better, but a lot of it does come down to what we're eating, our lifestyle related factors.
Yeah.
If GI stuff, am I putting the right stuff in my GI tract? So many people have IBS, whether it's IBS with constipation or diarrhea, and they just live with the symptoms and they never look into it. Well, that can also be causing inflammation, let's say, in their stomach lining. If there's someone who has celiac and they don't know that, all of the cilia in their stomach are stunted, so they're not absorbing really any of those micronutrients.
Right.
So they're going to be having some of those other issues too, where they might be getting petechiae, so like the little spots, red spots on their skin, which is coming from a micronutrient deficiency. So the skin is a very easy outward way, but you can also look too of are my periods changing? How am I sleeping? Am I waking up throughout the night? Am I just having more aches and pains than I normally did before? Am I getting more muscle cramping? How is my stamina as I'm walking up the stairs? Am I out of breath where I have to sit down for 5 minutes? Those are all other things that we have to look at too. And it's not just what we see on paper. It's how are you feeling overall and what changes are you feeling too?
So a client comes in and has a couple of these different complaints or symptoms going on. Do you work them through an elimination diet to try to help them understand some of these things?
So we'll talk, especially if it's something GI-wise, we'll talk about any family history, if anyone has had, because celiac is autoimmune, so it can run in the family. Or if they've noticed too that they have certain foods or maybe certain spices that they're like, oh man, I get really bad cramping or I get joint pain. Right. I had a client who had
turmeric or nightshades might do that, right?
Yeah. She had a really bad eczema on her hands, and she noticed that when she stopped eating gluten, the eczema went away. So, but she didn't know that. We were trying to figure out okay, well, that's a common thing that can kind of exacerbate it for people. So trying to figure out what's the history of it. Have you noticed any changes or trends? Right. Do you have garlic and onions? You have red sauce and you're like, I am just a gassy, bloated mess. You might have something going on where we need to look at the fermentable polysaccharides, monosaccharides, the FODMAPs, fructans in your diet to figure out, okay, is it something digestive wise that we may need to get rid of because it's hurting everything else?
All right, so some things that are happening that are really exciting in the hearing space, because we capture speech information with our ears and we process it in the brain. So the more that we understand about the brain, the better we can treat hearing loss. And we are treating hearing loss with less severe symptoms than ever before. That would be people having less challenges in dynamic hearing environments, whereas 15, 20 years ago, we might have said, well, you just seem too young for hearing aids yet.
Yeah.
Go struggle for another couple of years and come back and talk to us. So we're not making those choices in presenting treatment. So we're treating people at much younger ages. Again, the symptom set is much less severe. We're finding different combinations of diagnostics and screening protocols to bring to bear to educate a patient, and through person-centered care, talking with them about treatment. And in many cases, we're treating a patient where other hearing professionals might be reluctant to treat, but because the patient experiences a benefit through treatment, they're moving forward with treatment.
Yeah.
So are things like celiacs, because you've heard this discussion, at least I have, that the incidence of celiacs is much smaller than the amount of people who purport to have gluten sensitivity bordering on celiacs. Are there people being diagnosed with a less severe symptom set than maybe they were previously? And the same thing for IBS. I mean, are there people who would have, they wouldn't have been a candidate for a Crohn's protocol, but now they're being considered to be IBS adjacent, or they do have IBS because the symptoms are there, but maybe the chemistry profile or the genome profile or whatever it is that might be used to actually articulate and identify that condition aren't present, but all the symptoms are. So, I mean, is there an evolving dynamic to treatment and research in the nutrition space, specifically about gluten sensitivity and IBS and maybe some other things.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree that the diagnosis of people who actually have celiac, where they get that full-blown allergic reaction, is very, very small. But there are people too who might have IBS that acts like some issues with gluten sensitivity, where they can't tolerate it as well, or they get some of those GI responses of, I'm in the bathroom really constantly, or I'm getting a lot of cramping. And it could also be too how the food is processed. We were in Italy for 2 weeks for our honeymoon. I had pasta every single night. I lost 2 pounds on my honeymoon. Yeah. I never felt bloated. I'll feel bloated if I have a decent amount of pasta when I'm here. Yeah. So it might also be that processing of some of the foods that we're having. And with IBS, it's very frustrating, especially for people who have IBS. It's not Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, because it's kind of just that blanket diagnosis of, you have IBS, figure it out, deal with it. Sorry.
Yeah.
And that's where we really come into play and say, okay, well, what might be causing it? Do you have that family history? Do you notice that you can do lactose-free dairy, some naturally lactose-free things like yogurt or cheese without any issue? But if you do a glass of milk, it's really bothering your GI tract. Okay, so we know that lactose intolerance is probably going to happen. Do we need a test for you to know that you feel better when you don't have it? No, but we can say let's naturally avoid those things or choose other options. And with gluten, I am seeing more and more of our clients have silent celiac, where they can have it and they don't get that outward reaction. But after a few days of having consistent doses of gluten in their diet, do they see and feel that response of, I'm having more cramping when I'm going to the bathroom, I'm having more bloating and swelling, I'm having more of that brain fog, where it takes more of that celiac or the gluten to kind of accumulate in their system to then have that outward experience too.
Okay.
So I think they are working at trying to figure out, and that's really where that personalized nutrition approach comes in. Because you don't want to be gluten-free if you don't have to be, because it's very, there are more gluten-free items on the market now, but still very restrictive. And also gluten-free isn't as regulated and doesn't have as many of the vitamins and minerals because of that highly processing that has to go into it when they are making it a gluten-free product.
Yeah. And if it's got messaging on the outside of the package that says it's fat-free, gluten-free, healthy for you, I mean, should people just assume that there's probably a trade-off in there somewhere? There's some over-processed nature to it.
Yeah.
That it maybe isn't all it's cracked up to be.
So when something is labeled, like if you were going to go and get coffee creamer, most coffee creamer is not dairy-based, it's chemical-based or it's oil-based. So you can either get the fat-free coffee creamer or you can get the sugar-free coffee creamer. But if you compared both of those, the fat-free coffee creamer is going to have more sodium, more sugar to make up for that flavor that you lost. The sugar-free coffee creamer is going to have more sodium, more fat to make up for the flavor that you lost with the sugar. Or it'll have artificial sweeteners in there, which can then cause other GI issues. Right. Sorbitol, any of those sugar alcohols will cause a diarrhea effect on people. So kind of being aware and say, can I just get the normal version of it? I don't want it to be fat-free or sugar-free. Can I make my own coffee creamer from actual milk that I have a friend down the road who has a farm, or, find a place that you trust and you enjoy their product and you believe in their product and doesn't have some of these wild, crazy claims that come along with it. Are the claims regulated? Yes. Absolutely. Heart healthy is a regulated claim. Low sodium is a regulated claim. No added salt is a regulated claim. But sometimes when you get rid of those things, they have to have other things in there to make up what you're losing, or else it doesn't taste good and no one buys the product.
Right. Okay. So where to now? Where or what would be some messaging for someone who's maybe on the fence about reaching out to an agency like yours? Curious about, what the first or next steps might be? What are some of the things that you might want to message to them or tell them?
Yeah. So anytime you're looking for nutrition help or support, always look to see if that person is a registered dietitian. It is a legally protected claim. Not everyone can call themselves a dietitian. Anyone can call themselves a nutritionist. Cliff, you could be a nutritionist because it's not a regulated term. Okay. So always look for a registered dietitian.
Add that to my resume.
Why not?
All right, there we go.
So, making sure that you're reaching out to a registered dietitian, making sure that you vibe with what their approach is, and making sure that it's something that you can see yourself doing for that next 90 years, not just 90 days. Because we really want to, and especially with our training, we want you to have that lifelong support and that learning and that education versus I'm going to sit here and tell you you need 200 grams of carbs, go have fun. You're not learning anything from that.
Right.
You know, if you're looking to work with us, you can always reach out to us on our website, nourishedwithemily.com, or go to our Instagram or Facebook pages, you know, Nourished with Emily for both of those, and just reach out to us and ask questions. You know, we can always connect you with previous clients of ours or current clients of ours, so that way you can hear it from someone who might be in your shoes. And I often use that too, as some of our own client examples on those conversations with new clients, because maybe I haven't dealt with what that person has of, you know, we've got someone to go now into diabetes remission, which is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, that you can talk to someone who's worked with us and they have that, you know, that story of how we've been able to help them and how we can help you too.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's fantastic, and certainly great for the client as well.
Yeah. He was so excited when he sent me that email, and then I was so excited. I was like, yes.
Yeah. And clearly you have a growing company. So congratulations on that. You're attracting talented people to work with you on this mission, and you're certainly attracting the client base that will continue to let you hire more people. So that's fantastic. Do you have an enduring mission or message, something that you want to live on beyond this podcast or maybe beyond Nourished with Emily?
Yeah, I think if we can start looking at nutrition, and this is really my bread and butter of what I love, is like engage in that nutrition education. You know, educate yourself so that you can make the choices and you can be your own registered dietitian. But start thinking about, especially anytime that you're getting started, what can I add versus taking away? What can I add to my plate? What's missing from here? What can I add to my routine that's going to give me that vitality and that feeling back versus the restriction mindset of all. So just start, if we can reframe it and look at that and think of a nutrition as an addition rather than subtraction, you're going to feel so much better, and you know, you'll be able to keep going too.
Well, thank you so much. One of the things that we're very much aware of at Timeless Hearing is none of us can change the fact that we're aging, but that perhaps through mindful choices, applied disciplines, a vision and commitment to our future selves, we have some say in just how we'll age, which maybe gives us a little bit more power and an agency in the process.
I 100% agree.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your spirit. And thank you for what you've created, which clearly is impacting people in some fundamental and fantastic ways. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Great. Again, this is the Timeless Podcast presented by Timeless Hearing, a group of hearing professionals on a mission to convince you that the best moments of your life lie ahead of you, not behind, that your spark, though wavering, can be reignited, your energy restored, and the fullness of both your love and life can be recaptured or redefined. Visit us at timelesshearing.com or any of our area practice locations and come find out how. Thank you so much for your time. If we've enlightened you at all, sparked your curiosity, or prompted you and your feedback on how or where we've gotten it wrong, please comment, share, and follow. All right, so long.